Josephine Vale is 36 years old. 20 years ago, her parents threw her out of the house for getting pregnant in 10th grade. 16 years old. November rain. One suitcase. Her mother pointing at the door, telling her she was dead to them. That same night, they signed papers erasing her from the family. Her and any child she might ever have. Jo kept those papers. She kept everything. For 2 decades, she was invisible. Her parents told everyone she'd moved abroad, built their spotless reputation on the grave of the daughter they'd thrown away. Then last week, they showed up at her door, desperate, smiling, demanding to meet their grandson. A grandson they'd bragged about for months to 200 of their most powerful friends. They offered her $250,000. They had no idea the grandson they'd been promising everyone didn't exist. And what they found instead would tear apart everything they'd spent 50 years building. Salem, Oregon, November 2004. Jo was 16, a sophomore at St. Augustine's Academy, and the youngest child of Edmund and Patricia Vale. On paper, they were the perfect family. Her father ran a respected construction and development firm downtown, Vale Construction Group, established 1987, its name stamped on half the office parks and church additions in 3 counties. Her mother had chaired the Ladies Guild at Cedar Ridge Fellowship for 4 consecutive years. They sat in the front pew every Sunday, dressed in coordinated outfits her mother selected each Saturday night. But every family has its hierarchy, and Jo learned hers early. Preston, her older brother, was 22 and in his 3rd year of a civil engineering program, being groomed to eventually run the firm. He was the pride of the family, the son who would carry the Vale name onto the next skyline. Bridget, 20, was studying to become a teacher, the beautiful daughter who never questioned anything. And then there was Jo, what her mother once called the surprise, born when Patricia was 34, 6 years after she thought she was done having children. Jo doesn't think her mother ever forgave her for disrupting that plan. The signs were subtle but constant. Family photos in the living room somehow never included her school portraits. Dinner conversations revolved around Preston's site visits or Bridget's student teaching. When Jo mentioned making honor roll, her father would nod and say, "That's nice, Jo," before turning back to Preston. She learned to make herself small, to not ask for too much, to not need too much. Her father had a saying he repeated at every family gathering: reputation takes 20 years to build and 5 minutes to destroy. Jo didn't understand then how prophetic those words would become, or that she would be the 5 minutes he feared. She met Eli Navarro at the public library downtown. It sounds unremarkable, but for Jo, the library was sanctuary, a place where no one compared her to her siblings or reminded her of expectations she could never meet. She went there 3 afternoons a week, ostensibly to study, really, just to breathe. Eli attended Roosevelt High, the public school her parents would never acknowledge existed. He was 17, worked part-time at his uncle's auto repair shop, and had the kindest eyes Jo had ever seen. He found her crying in the biography section one October afternoon after her mother had forgotten to pick her up from school for the 3rd time that month. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You okay?" No one had asked her that in a very long time. They dated secretly for 2 months. He was gentle and patient, and made her feel like she mattered, like she was someone worth remembering. October 28, 2004. Jo will never forget staring at that pregnancy test in the bathroom of a gas station 3 miles from her school. 2 pink lines. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. When she told Eli, he didn't run, didn't make excuses. He held her hands and said, "We'll figure this out together, Jo. You're not alone." She wanted to believe him. Part of her did. But she knew her parents. She knew what mattered to them. And she knew that when she told them, their first question wouldn't be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What will people think?" She decided to tell them at Sunday dinner. She didn't know it would be the last meal she'd ever eat in that house. Sunday, November 14th, 2004, 7:32 p.m. The roast was overcooked. Jo remembers that detail because she was staring at it, trying to find the courage to speak, while her father complained about a permitting dispute and her mother calculated which families would attend the church Christmas gala. "I have something to tell you." The table went quiet. 4 faces turned toward her. Her parents, Preston home for the weekend, Bridget visiting from college. "I'm pregnant." Her mother's fork clattered against her plate. Her father didn't move. "Who is the father?" His voice was ice. "Is it someone from St. Augustine's? Someone we know?" "His name is Eli Navarro. He goes to Roosevelt High. He works at his uncle's auto shop." Her mother's face had gone pale. "You've been seeing a boy from the public school." "He's a good person, Mom." "Does he come from a good family?" Her father cut in. "What does his father do?" "He lives with his uncle. He works at the shop." The silence that followed lasted exactly 11 seconds. Joe counted. Then her father stood. "You will not keep it." "Edmund," her mother started. "She will not destroy everything we've built." He looked at Joe like she was a stranger, like she was something that needed to be removed. "If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family." By 9:15 p.m., Joe was standing on the front porch with one suitcase, rain soaking through her sweater. Her mother had opened the door and pointed outside. Not her father, her mother. Preston and Bridget watched from the upstairs window. Neither of them came down. Joe called Eli from a payphone at a gas station on Bellamy Street. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial. He picked up on the second ring. "Joe, what's wrong?" "They kicked me out." 20 minutes later, his uncle's truck pulled up to the gas station. Eli jumped out before it fully stopped, wrapped her in his jacket, and held her while she sobbed against his chest. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you." They didn't have a plan. They had $300 between them, a truck with questionable brakes, and nowhere to go. That's when Louise Bennett saved Joe's life. She was their neighbor, 3 houses down, 62 years old, a retired school teacher, the only person on their street who didn't treat Joe's father like he owned the neighborhood. She'd seen Joe standing in the rain from her window. She'd watched long enough to understand. "You can stay with me," she said, when Joe knocked on her door at nearly 10 o'clock at night. "As long as you need." 2 weeks. That's how long they stayed in Louise's guest room before Eli found them a studio apartment in Seattle, $425 a month above a laundromat that smelled like bleach and secondhand hope. Her parents had their lawyer draw up papers the night they threw her out. Joe knows this because her father mailed her a copy 3 days later. Certified mail, signature required, like she was a business transaction. The document stated that Josephine Ann Vale forfeited all inheritance rights and that the Vale family bore no legal or moral obligation to her or any child born to her. Joe kept that paper. She's kept it for 20 years. Ren Elise Vale was born on July 6, 2005, at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. 7 pounds 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, her father's brown eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. She came into the world screaming, and Joe thought, "Good, scream. Make them hear you. Don't ever let anyone make you small." The first 5 years were a blur of survival. Eli worked double shifts at a repair shop in Ballard, while Joe finished her GED, then started community college classes, 2 at a time, whatever she could manage around Ren's schedule. They lived on ramen and free bread from the day-old bin at the bakery down the street. Joe learned to sew patches onto patches to make a dollar stretch until it begged for mercy. She sent her parents a birth announcement when Ren was born. No response. A photo on her first birthday. Silence. By her second birthday, Joe stopped trying. She and Eli never got married. They kept saying they would someday, when they had money for a real wedding, when life calmed down. Someday kept getting pushed back. Then, on March 15, 2010, a delivery truck ran a red light on Aurora Avenue. Eli was driving home from a night shift. The police officer who came to Joe's door said he died on impact. He was 26 years old. Ren was 4. The life insurance policy Eli had through work paid out $12,000. That was it. $12,000 for 26 years of a good man's life. Joe was 22, a single mother with a 4-year-old daughter, $12,000, and absolutely no one to call. She could have given up then. She didn't. She'd started doing small interior design projects while Eli was alive, decorating apartments for neighbors who couldn't afford professionals, staging homes for real estate agents willing to take a chance on a young mother with no credentials. She had an eye for it, people said, a gift for making small spaces feel like home. After Eli died, she threw herself into that work like her life depended on it, because it did. In 2012, Joe met Renata Ashworth at a design workshop at Seattle Central College. Renata was 52, recently retired as creative director of a major design firm and looking for a project. For reasons Joe still doesn't fully understand, Renata chose her. "You have talent," she said, after reviewing Joe's portfolio. "Raw, unpolished, but real. Let me help you shape it." In 2014, with Renata's mentorship and a $50,000 SBA loan that took 3 attempts to secure, Joe founded Fernwood Interiors. Their first office was a converted closet in a shared workspace. By 2018, 8 employees, revenue $1.3 million. In 2022, Puget Sound Living magazine ran a feature story on her, From Teen Mom to Design CEO, Josephine Vale's story. The journalist, Naomi Reyes, spent 3 days interviewing her about her journey, the pregnancy at 16, being cut off from her family, losing Eli, building a business from nothing. Joe told her everything except her parents' names, not to protect them, to protect Ren, from anyone who might try to connect her to people who never wanted her to exist. By 2024, 24 employees, revenue $4.6 million, a corner office overlooking Capitol Hill. Her daughter was 19, a sophomore at the University of Washington, majoring in psychology. Brilliant, fierce, everything Joe had hoped she'd become. 20 years, no contact from the Vale family, until last week. Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, 6:47 p.m. Joe had just gotten home from a client meeting, a tech executive renovating her Mercer Island waterfront property, a contract worth $800,000. Her mind was still running through fabric samples when she turned onto her street and saw the car, a black Mercedes-Benz S-Class, Oregon plates. Her heart stopped. She parked in her driveway and sat there for a full minute, watching 2 figures standing at her front door. The man had gray hair now, stooped shoulders. The woman still held herself with that rigid posture Joe remembered, that constant vigilance against anything that might disturb her carefully constructed world. Edmund and Patricia Vale, her parents. She hadn't seen them in 20 years. She considered driving away, going to a hotel, calling Ren, pretending this wasn't happening, but she was 36 years old. She owned a company. She had built a life without them. She would not run. She got out of the car and walked toward them. Her father spoke first. "Joe, you look..." He paused, scanning her coat, her bag, her house. "Well, what are you doing here?" Her mother stepped forward, her face more lined now, her hair a careful shade of ash blonde. "We know about your son, Joe. We know you have a son." Joe stared at her. "We'd like to meet him," her father added. "We'd like to reconnect as a family." The absurdity of it nearly made her laugh. 20 years of silence. 20 years of pretending she didn't exist. And now they were standing on her porch, asking to meet a grandson they'd never bothered to know, a grandson who didn't exist. She let them into her house. She still doesn't know why. Maybe she needed to hear what 20 years of silence had led to. Her father sat in her living room like he was evaluating a property for purchase, assessing the hardwood floors, the custom shelving, the original artwork. Her mother perched on the edge of the sofa, hands folded, spine straight. "Your anniversary," Joe said. "That's why you're here." 50 years, her father said, almost smiling. "November 15th. We're hosting a celebration at the Belmont Hotel. 200 guests. The mayor will be there, Pastor Ogden, the Construction Association Board." "What does that have to do with me?" Her mother exchanged a glance with her father. "There have been questions, Joe, about you, about what happened 20 years ago." "People talk," her father added. Some people remember we had a third child. They've asked where you are. What happened? We've always said you moved away, went abroad. But lately, the questions have become more persistent. So you need me to make an appearance, show everyone the Vale family is whole and happy. We need your son. Her mother's voice was firm. We've told people about him, about our grandson. He should be there, representing the next generation of this family. The room went very still. Who told you I have a son? We read the article. Her father waved his hand dismissively. The magazine piece. It mentioned your child, your successful business. You've done better than we expected. Better than we expected. As if she'd been graded. As if her entire life had been a test she might have failed. And if I refuse? Her father's jaw tightened. He reached into his leather briefcase and withdrew a blank check. The sight of it made her stomach turn. We're prepared to compensate you, he said, placing it on her coffee table. $275,000. You bring your son to the party, stay for 3 hours, take some family photos. Then you can return to your life. $275,000? Is that what 20 years of silence costs? We're also prepared to reinstate you in the family trust. Her mother leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The combined estate is valued at $4.1 million. You'd have an equal share with Preston and Bridget. Joe thought about the studio apartment above the laundromat. The nights she'd worked double shifts while Wren slept in a playpen behind a coffee shop counter because she couldn't afford childcare. The years spent building something from nothing while they sat in their Salem house pretending she'd never existed. And, if I say no? Her father's expression hardened. We would prefer not to involve your son directly, Joe, but if necessary, we can reach out to him ourselves. Explain the situation, help him understand his family history. It was a threat, subtle but unmistakable. You want to contact my child, she said slowly, and tell them your version of what happened. We want to be a family again. Her mother spread her hands, the picture of reasonableness. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Joe was about to answer when she heard footsteps on the stairs, and everything changed. Mom, is everything okay? I heard voices. Wren stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her psychology textbook still in hand, wearing sweatpants and a University of Washington hoodie, dark hair in a messy ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was, a 19-year-old college student who'd been studying in her room. Joe's mother rose to her feet, her face cycling through confusion, calculation, and something close to horror. Who is this? This is Wren. Joe stood, positioning herself slightly between her daughter and her parents. My daughter? Your granddaughter? Daughter? Her father's voice cracked. But we were told. The article said child. You assumed the rest. Wren's gaze moved from her mother to the strangers in their living room. Understanding dawned in her eyes. These are them, she said. The grandparents who threw you out when you were pregnant with me? Her mother flinched. That's not. It was more complicated than. Which part was complicated? Wren crossed her arms. The part where you kicked a 16-year-old out in the rain, or the part where you spent 20 years pretending she didn't exist? Young lady, her father started. I'm not your young lady. I'm the grandchild you never wanted to meet, the one you tried to make disappear. Her voice was steady, but Joe could see her hands trembling. I know everything. Mom never hid it from me. I know about the letter. I know about the inheritance papers. I know you told your friends she went abroad. Her parents sat in stunned silence. Wren looked at her mother. They came here for a grandson, didn't they? Someone to show off. Yes. She turned back to them with a cold smile. Surprise! Her father recovered faster than her mother. Joe watched him recalibrate, the businessman in him assessing this new variable. A granddaughter, he said carefully. That works. We can adjust the narrative. Wren can come to the party as what? Wren cut in. The secret granddaughter you've been hiding for 19 years? The daughter of the teen mom you threw away? We could say you were studying abroad, her mother said, her voice pleading now. Recently returned. A surprise reunion. I was born in Seattle. I've never left the country. I'm a sophomore at UW. Wren laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you even hear yourselves? You want me to lie to 200 people about my entire existence? The party is November 15th. Her father checked his watch, as if time were the only variable that mattered. 10 days from now, we need an answer by the 10th. Joe stood. I think you should leave. Joe, I'll consider what you've said, but not tonight. Not with Wren here. Her mother rose, gathering her handbag. At the door, she turned back. This is an opportunity to heal, Joe, to put the past behind us. Don't let old wounds cost you your future. Joe watched them walk to their Mercedes, watched her father help her mother into the passenger seat, the same way he had 1,000 times before, as if this were any ordinary evening. When the car disappeared around the corner, Wren spoke. You're not actually considering this, are you? Joe looked at her daughter, this fierce, brilliant young woman she'd raised alone, the person Edmund and Patricia Vale had tried to erase from existence before she was even born. No, she said, but I'm not done with them yet. That night, after Wren went to bed, Joe pulled a fireproof lockbox from the back of her closet. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the documents of her erasure, the notarized letter of disinheritance, dated November 14, 2004, signed by Edmund Allen Vale and Patricia Ann Vale, witnessed by a notary named Harold Brennan. She remembered the day her father mailed it to her, certified, signature required, as if he wanted to make sure she knew exactly how thorough he'd been. 3 pages of legal language designed to be airtight. Josephine Ann Vale hereby forfeits all claims to the Vale family estate, and the family bears no legal or moral obligation to the aforementioned party, or any dependent thereof. Any dependent thereof. Wren, reduced to 3 words in a legal document, erased before she took her first breath. Joe photographed each page, uploaded them to cloud storage, made backup copies. Mom, she looked up. Wren was standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. I couldn't sleep either. She sat beside her mother on the bed, looking at the documents spread across the comforter. Is that the letter? Yes. Wren picked up the first page, read it slowly. When she finished, her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. They really did it, she whispered. They really just cut you out like you were nothing. They did. What are you going to do with these? Joe looked at her daughter, at the evidence of 20 years of calculated cruelty laid out before them. I don't know yet, but whatever I do, they won't be able to pretend anymore. Wren nodded slowly. I might have an idea. The next morning, Joe made a call she hadn't made in over a year. Louise Bennett answered on the 3rd ring. Joe, is that you, sweetheart? Mrs. Bennett. Joe smiled despite everything. I hope I'm not calling too early. At my age, early is relative. What's wrong? You sound like you've got weight on your shoulders. Joe told her about her parents' visit, the invented grandson, the anniversary party, the $275,000. When she finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. Those people, Louise finally said, 20 years and they haven't changed one bit. Mrs. Bennett, I need to ask you something. That night, November 14th, 2004, I remember it like it was yesterday. Her voice hardened. I watched from my window, saw you standing in the rain, that little suitcase at your feet, watched your parents' car. Well, you know, I should have come out sooner. I've regretted that every day since. Do you still have your security camera footage from back then? A pause. You know, I never delete anything. Old teacher's habit. Document everything. Let me check my files. 20 minutes later, Joe's phone buzzed with an email. A grainy but unmistakable image. A 16-year-old girl standing on a porch in the rain. 9:17 p.m., November 14th, 2004. The timestamp visible in the corner. The address, partially visible in frame. That's you, Louise said, when Joe called back. That's the night they threw you away. Would you be willing to verify this officially, if needed? Honey, I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask. Her voice was fierce. Whatever you need, I'm there. Joe thanked her and hung up. 2 pieces of evidence, 2 witnesses. Now she needed a plan. That evening, she reread her own story. The Puget Sound Living article was still online, shared over 12,000 times since it published in March 2022. She scrolled through the comments, thousands of them. "This woman is incredible. I went through something similar. Someone should make a movie about her life." One comment, posted just 2 weeks earlier, caught her eye. "Does anyone know if she's related to the Vale family in Salem, the construction people? Someone in my church mentioned it, and now I'm curious." So that's how her parents found out. Her phone rang. "Renata Ashworth. Joe, I heard through the grapevine that your parents materialized after 2 decades of radio silence." Joe laughed despite herself. "News travels fast. This is Seattle. Everything travels fast." Renata's voice softened. "What do you need?" "I don't know yet. Advice, maybe? Perspective?" "What I know," Renata said, "is that you've spent 20 years proving who you are without them. Don't let 3 hours at their party undo that." She was right. But Joe was already thinking bigger than 3 hours. Thursday, November 7th, 3:42 p.m. An Oregon number Joe didn't recognize. She almost let it go to voicemail. "Joe, it's Preston." She hadn't heard her brother's voice in 20 years. It was deeper now, weathered. The voice of a man in his 40s instead of the 22-year-old who'd watched from an upstairs window while she stood in the rain. "Preston, I know I have no right to call. I know you have no reason to talk to me." He exhaled shakily. "But I need you to know some things before whatever happens next." "Then talk." The grandson story, the whole thing, it came from Mom. She read the Puget Sound Living article 2 years ago, but didn't read it carefully. Just saw child and successful business, and constructed this whole narrative about you having a son who was some kind of entrepreneur. She invented a grandson, told her church friends, the construction association crowd, built an entire story about this brilliant young man carrying on the Vale name. Preston's voice cracked. "Dad went along with it. They've been dining out on your imaginary son for months." Joe closed her eyes. Even now, even after everything, her parents' capacity for delusion still stunned her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I was a coward. Joe, 20 years ago, I should have come downstairs. I should have said something. Bridget and I have talked about it for years. We were wrong. We've always been wrong. And now I want to make it right. Whatever that looks like." He paused. "The anniversary party. Bridget and I will be there. If you decide to come, you won't be alone." Preston talked for another hour, about the unwritten rules of being a Vale child, the constant performance, the way their parents wielded approval like a weapon. "Bridget has 2 kids," he said, 8 and 11. "She's terrified of them growing up the way we did, walking on eggshells, never knowing if they're good enough." "Why didn't you ever reach out in 20 years? Long pause. "I almost did 5 years ago. Found your number through the business website. Dialed it a dozen times." His voice dropped. "Every time I hung up before it connected, because I knew if I talked to you, I'd have to admit what I let happen, and I wasn't ready." "What changed?" "Seeing them show up at your door demanding a grandson that doesn't exist. Watching them try to buy you like a prop for their anniversary photo. It made me realize, if I don't say something now, I never will." Before they hung up, Preston added one more thing. "The anniversary party. There's going to be a moment live-streamed on the church Facebook page. Pastor Ogden's idea, a show of unity for the congregation. A live stream, 200 witnesses in person, and who knew how many watching online. Thank you for telling me, Preston. What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm starting to see it clearly." Friday, November 8th, 10:14 a.m. Her father called directly this time, no preamble. "Joe, we're running out of time. The party is in 1 week. $275,000. Full reinstatement in the family trust. Final offer." "I've been talking to Preston." Silence. "He told me about the grandson story you've been telling people, the one you made up based on an article you didn't bother to read carefully." "That's not. We may have embellished slightly. You invented an entire person. You've been telling your friends about your successful grandson for months, a grandson that doesn't exist." "Joe, Her father's voice hardened. I don't appreciate your tone. After everything we're offering. What exactly are you offering? Money to make me perform for your friends? A spot in a trust you used to erase me? Jo kept her voice calm, steady. You're not offering me anything. You're trying to buy your way out of a lie you created. You have no right to judge us. You're the one who destroyed this family. You brought shame. I was 16 years old. I was pregnant and scared, and I needed my parents. Her grip tightened on the phone. And you threw me out like garbage and spent 20 years pretending I died. If you don't come to this party, Jo, you will never have another opportunity to be part of this family. You said that 20 years ago, and you know what? I built a better life without you than I ever would have had with you. We'll see about that. He hung up. Jo sat in her office, heart pounding, mind racing. 1 week, 200 guests, 1 live stream. It was time to stop letting them control the narrative. That evening, she sat at her dining table with Ren and Renata. They want a performance, Renata said, swirling her wine. They want you to show up, smile for the cameras, validate 20 years of lies. They want to use you, Ren added, the same way they've always used you, something to manage, not someone to love. Jo looked at both of them, her mentor, her daughter, the family she'd built for herself. I'm going to that party. Ren's head snapped up. Mom, not to give them what they want, to give myself what I need. Jo pulled out her phone, showed them the photos of the disinheritance letter, Louise's security footage, the Puget Sound Living article. They've spent 20 years controlling my story, telling people I went abroad, inventing a grandson, making me disappear. And you want to undisappear, Renata said slowly. I want to tell the truth in front of everyone who matters to them. On their stage, at their party, during their precious live stream. Jo took a breath. Not to humiliate them. To stop letting them pretend I don't exist. I'm coming with you. Ren's voice was firm. They need to see who I really am, not their imaginary grandson, me. Jo reached for her hand. Are you sure this could be? I've spent my whole life knowing that my grandparents chose their reputation over my existence. I'm sure. She called Preston that night. Your offer to stand with me, does it still hold? Bridget and I talked. We're ready. Then I need you to do something. Don't warn Mom and Dad. Don't tell them I'm coming. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Jo looked out at the Seattle skyline, at the life she'd built from nothing. Because in 1 week, we're going to show them what family actually means. Saturday, November 15th, 2024, 6:47 p.m. The grand ballroom at the Belmont Hotel was everything her parents would have chosen. Chandeliers dripping crystal, white tablecloths starched to precision, flower arrangements that probably cost more than Jo's first month's rent in Seattle, 200 guests in formal attire, clutching champagne flutes, making small talk about zoning boards and investment portfolios. Jo stood in the entrance with Ren beside her. Ren wore a navy dress, simple and elegant. Jo had chosen black, professional, understated, impossible to ignore. You okay? Ren whispered. I'm about to crash my parents' 50th anniversary party to tell 200 people they've been lying for 20 years. Jo squeezed her hand. I'm terrified. That's not what I asked. Jo looked at her, this incredible young woman who'd grown up knowing her grandparents had tried to erase her and had built her own strength from that knowledge instead of letting it break her. Yeah, she said. I'm okay. They walked in. The room was arranged around a raised platform where her parents would give their speeches. A camera crew was setting up the live stream for Cedar Ridge Fellowship. Jo could see the Facebook Live indicator already blinking, and there they were, Edmund and Patricia Vale, standing on that stage, surrounded by well-wishers, her mother in champagne silk, her father in a tailored navy suit, both of them glowing with the confidence of people who believed they'd won. They hadn't noticed her yet, but heads were starting to turn. Someone near the door whispered, Is that the daughter from the article? The whispers spread like ripples in water. Then her mother looked up. Her father had just begun his speech. 50 years of marriage has taught me that family is everything. Patricia and I have built our lives around that principle. Our children, our community, our faith. His voice carried across the ballroom, amplified by the microphone, captured by the live stream camera. The comment section scrolled beneath the small monitor near the stage. Beautiful couple. God bless the Vale family. What an inspiration. Her mother saw Joe first. Her champagne smile froze. Her father followed her gaze, stopped mid-sentence. The room began to notice, heads turning, whispers building. Someone near the back said, loud enough to carry, "That's her from the magazine, the design CEO." Someone else, "That's Edmund's daughter. I thought she was in Europe." Her father recovered first. "As I was saying, family has always—" Joe started walking toward the stage. The crowd parted, not dramatically, this wasn't a movie, but people stepped aside, sensing something was about to happen. Wren walked beside her, chin high, steps steady. Preston appeared at the edge of the crowd, Bridget beside him. They didn't try to stop her, they just watched. "Joe," her father's voice came through the speakers, strained now. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting." She climbed the 3 steps to the platform. The live stream camera tracked her movement. She could feel 200 pairs of eyes on her, plus however many were watching online. "Hello, Dad." She took the microphone from his hand before he could react. "Hello, everyone. My name is Josephine Vale. For those of you who don't know me, and many of you don't, I'm Edmund and Patricia's youngest daughter." She paused. "The one they told you went to Europe 20 years ago." The silence in that ballroom was absolute. "I didn't go to Europe. On November 14th, 2004, 20 years ago tomorrow, my parents discovered I was pregnant at 16. That same night, they threw me out of their house. They had their lawyer draft papers disowning me. They told me I was dead to them." Someone gasped. The live stream comments were exploding, scrolling faster than anyone could read. "They told everyone I'd gone abroad. For 20 years, they pretended I didn't exist." Joe reached into her bag and pulled out the notarized letter. "This is the document my father mailed me 3 days after throwing me out. It states that I forfeit all inheritance rights and that the Vale family has no obligation to me, or," she read it aloud, close enough to the camera, "any dependent thereof. That dependent? That's my daughter, Wren." She gestured to where Wren stood at the edge of the stage. "Your granddaughter, who you've never met. The grandson you've been telling your friends about for months doesn't exist. You invented him, based on a magazine article you didn't read carefully." Her father grabbed for the microphone. "Joe, this isn't the place." "When is the place, Dad?" She held the mic out of his reach. "When is the right time to tell the truth? You came to my house last week offering me $275,000 to parade a fictional grandson at this party, to make your lie look real." She turned to the crowd, to the camera, to the 200 witnesses and the thousands watching online. "I didn't come here for money. I came here because I'm done being erased." Pastor Ogden stepped forward. "Edmund, is this true?" Her father couldn't answer. Her mother started crying. Joe had only seen Patricia Vale cry once in her entire childhood, at her own mother's funeral. Now tears streamed down her face, ruining the careful makeup she'd spent hours perfecting. "Patricia," Pastor Ogden's voice was firm, "I asked your husband a question. Is what your daughter is saying true?" The room held its breath. Her father looked at the crowd, the mayor, the construction association board, the church elders who had respected him for decades. Joe watched him calculate, search for an angle, try to find words that would spin this into something acceptable. He couldn't find them. "It was a difficult time," he finally said. "We made decisions." "You threw me out because I was pregnant," Joe said, her voice calm. "Because your reputation mattered more than your child." Preston stepped onto the stage, then Bridget. They stood beside her, not touching, but present. "She's telling the truth," Preston said, his voice carrying through the room. "Bridget and I were there that night. We watched from the window while our parents put our 16-year-old sister out in the rain. We never said anything. That was our failure." The whispers became a roar. Phones came out, texting, recording. The mayor was already moving toward the exit. "Mrs. Bennett, Joe said, pointing to a gray-haired woman in the back row who'd flown in from Salem that morning. Our neighbor from 20 years ago. She saw everything. She has photos, timestamps. Louise Bennett stood, chin lifted. I watched that child stand in the rain for 10 minutes before she walked away. I gave her a place to sleep. The Vale family never once asked where she went. Joe handed the microphone back to her father. He took it reflexively, like a man in shock. I didn't come here to destroy you, she said, quiet enough that only those on stage could hear. I came here to stop being invisible. Then she turned back to the crowd and raised her voice. I'm not asking for your pity. I don't need it. 20 years ago, I was thrown out with nothing. Today, I own a design company in Seattle with 24 employees and over $4 million in annual revenue. My daughter is a sophomore at the University of Washington. We built our lives without the Vale family's help. She looked directly at the camera. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to buy my silence last week. $275,000 to pretend their lies were true. I'm here because they deserve to face the consequences of what they did. Not in private, but in front of the community they value more than their own children. Ren climbed onto the stage and took the microphone. I'm Ren, she said, the granddaughter they never wanted. I'm 19 years old. I've known my whole life that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mother, and by extension, over me. She looked at Edmund and Patricia. You could have known me. You could have watched me grow up. You could have been at my birthday parties, my school plays, my high school graduation. Her voice cracked. You chose not to, and now you don't get to pretend that was ever our fault. She handed back the microphone and walked off the stage. Joe followed. Behind them, the ballroom erupted into chaos. At the door, Joe turned back one last time. One more thing. Her voice cut through the noise. I'm not going to sue you. I'm not going to contest the will or demand money. The disinheritance papers you signed 20 years ago, I'm keeping them as a reminder of who you really are. Not as a weapon. Her father looked up, confusion crossing his face. He'd expected a lawsuit, demands. But understand this, if you ever spread lies about me or my daughter again, if you ever try to contact Ren without her consent, or spin some new story about us for your friends, I will make every document I have public. I have the letter, I have time-stamped photos, I have witnesses. She nodded toward Louise. And now I have 200 witnesses to this conversation. Renata appeared at her elbow. Ready? Yes. As they walked through the doors, Joe heard Pastor Ogden's voice. Edmund, Patricia, I think we need to talk privately tonight. Ren squeezed her hand as they stepped into the November evening. The air was cold and clean, and for the first time in 20 years, Joe felt like she could breathe. Mom, Ren's voice was small. Did we do the right thing? Joe thought about 16-year-old Joe standing in the rain, with a suitcase and a baby she hadn't planned for. She thought about all the years of building, surviving, fighting to become someone worth being. We told the truth, she said. We set a boundary. We let them face the consequences of their own choices. She pulled Ren into a hug. That's not revenge. That's justice. What happens now? Joe looked up at the night sky. Now we go home. The fallout began within hours. By midnight, the live stream clip had been shared over 800 times. By morning, that number had tripled. Someone titled it, Woman Exposes Parents' 20-Year Lie at Their Anniversary Party, and uploaded it to YouTube, where it hit 40,000 views in the first day. 47 guests left the party within 30 minutes of Joe's departure. She learned this from Preston, who called Sunday morning with a full report. The mayor walked out without saying goodbye to Dad. The Pattersons from the church board followed him. The Hendersons, you remember them, the dealership family. They actually apologized to me on their way out. For never asking where you were. For just accepting the story. Sunday afternoon, a short item appeared in a local paper. Local developer's anniversary gala ends in family revelation. Carefully neutral, but the comment section was not. By Monday, Edmund had resigned his position as elder at Cedar Ridge Fellowship. For personal reasons, the bulletin said, but everyone knew. By Wednesday, the Construction Association Board announced it would be reviewing membership criteria at its next meeting. Edmund's name was specifically mentioned. Through it all, Joe was in Seattle, answering emails from potential clients. 7 new inquiries came in that week. People who'd seen the Puget Sound Living article 2 years earlier and had just connected it to the viral video. Naomi Reyes called. "Joe, your video is everywhere. We'd love to do a follow-up piece." The CEO who confronted her past. "What do you think?" "Let me get back to you." "Of course, just know the response has been overwhelming." It wasn't wrong. Joe's inbox filled with messages that had nothing to do with design. About family, about being cut off, about spending years feeling invisible, and finally finding the courage to speak. Saturday, Preston and Bridget made their first visit to Joe's home in 20 years. They sat in her living room, the same room where their parents had tried to buy her silence 2 weeks earlier, and talked for 6 hours. Preston told her about the years of guilt. Bridget cried when she met Ren for the first time. Their children, Joe's niece and nephew, played in the backyard, while the adults tried to rebuild something from the wreckage. "I'm sorry," Preston said. "I know it's not enough. I know sorry doesn't cover 20 years. "No," Joe agreed. "It doesn't, but it's a start." 1 week after the party, an Oregon number lit up Joe's phone. Her mother. "Joe." Her voice was smaller than Joe had ever heard it. "I'm not calling to apologize. I don't know how to apologize for what we did." "Then why are you calling?" A long silence. "I watched the video. I've watched it 11 times. I keep looking at your face when you're talking, trying to see my daughter, the one I put out in the rain." She trailed off. "Your father is... he's not doing well. The church, the association, his colleagues, everyone is looking at him differently now. I didn't do this to punish him. Or you. I know that now." Her voice cracked. "You did it because you had to stop pretending. You did it because we gave you no other choice." "Why did you call, Mom?" The longest silence yet. "Because I wanted to hear your voice. Because I haven't heard it in 20 years, and I realized I might never hear it again. Because my granddaughter stood on that stage and told 200 people she'd spent her whole life knowing we didn't want her, and I couldn't breathe." Joe closed her eyes. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said. "I might never be, but I'm not going to hang up on you either. That's more than I deserve." "Yes, it is." They stayed on the line another minute, not speaking. Then she said goodbye. She didn't ask for another chance. She didn't demand anything. Maybe that was progress. Or maybe it was just the first step of a very long road. Thanksgiving, 2024. Joe's dining table, the one she'd bought 3 years earlier from an estate sale and refinished herself, seated 12. It had never been this full. Ren sat at her right hand, Renata at her left. Louise Bennett, who'd flown up from Salem again, was teaching Joe's nephew to fold napkins into swans. Preston carved the turkey while his wife set out side dishes. Bridget's daughters argued about who got to light the candles. Her parents weren't there. They hadn't reached that point. Maybe they never would. But looking around that table, Joe realized something. She'd spent 20 years mourning a family that had never really wanted her. Now she was surrounded by people who'd chosen to be there, who wanted to know her, not a version of her, not a prop for their image, but her. Ren stood to make a toast. "I wrote something for Mom." She pulled out a folded paper. "When I was little, I used to ask why I didn't have grandparents like the other kids. Mom always told me the truth, that they'd made a choice. And that choice wasn't about me. It took me years to really understand that." She looked at her mother. "But I understand now, and I know that everything I have, everything I am, is because you never let their choice define us." She raised her glass. "To the family we build, not the one we're born into." Everyone drank. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the guests scattered through the house drinking coffee, Joe stood at the kitchen window. Ren appeared beside her. "You okay?" Joe looked at her daughter, at this life she'd assembled from the ruins of everything she thought she'd lost. "Yeah," she said, "I really am." 20 years ago, Jo was a scared 16-year-old standing in the rain, watching her parents' taillights disappear down the street. She thought her life was over. She thought she had nothing left. She was wrong. She had Eli, for as long as she could have him. She had Louise Bennett, who opened her door when she didn't have to. She had Renata, who saw potential in a young mother with nothing but determination. She had Ren, who grew up knowing the truth and chose to be fierce instead of bitter. And eventually she had herself, the version of her who stopped asking for permission to exist. Her parents still haven't apologized. Not really. Edmund has barely spoken since the party. Patricia calls occasionally, and Jo answers when she can. Preston and Bridget are trying. They're all trying, but Jo isn't waiting for them to change. She's living her life, the one she built, the one she earned, the one that belongs entirely to her. That's not a happy ending. It's a real one, and real endings don't need applause. They just need truth.